It's a 4 o'clock order, or time. We'll call this meeting to order. First order of business, I need a motion and a second to allow Brian to participate via teleconference. Is there a motion? Dr. Blair, second by Sharon Williams. Any questions, objections? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Brian, you've been voted in to participate. Can you hear us?
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, I'll be looking for approval of the June 21st, 2021 minutes. Is there a motion to put the minutes on the floor? Mr. Watkins, second by Dr. Blair. Any questions, comments in regards to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those
Aye.
opposed? Ayes have it. Next, if you see the reports and updates, if there's no questions or comments for staff, we'll move along and receive and file those. Seeing no hands, we'll move past to the first zoning case, which is case ZBA-2021-00025, petition of Mary and Molly Schuler. This is a case that was denied by the ZBA, so I'd ask the motion to be in concurrence with the ZBA's recommendation. Dr. Blair, second by Sharon. Kathy?
This is a rezoning request from A2 Agriculture to RR Rural Residential in order to split approximately 8.8 acres from a 22-acre parcel to create a buildable lot on Voorhees Road in Radnor Township. Staff did recommend a denial here, as well as the Zoning Board of Appeals. Because we recommended denial, which is a little bit unusual for a lot of our zoning cases, and because the facts of this case are more easily explained visually, with your permission, I would ask Andrew Braun to do a brief PowerPoint presentation of our staff report. This was also presented at the Zoning Board of Appeals.
As Kathy indicated, this case was a little bit unusual in that it wasn't your standard land split request. And so we put together a presentation that illustrates the staff report to help the Zoning Board of Appeals better understand, to help the public better understand. So I'll just give you a little bit of parcel history here. We're dealing with the parcel on the left, which is in the pink. Back in 1996, this large parcel was split east-west, with Voorhees Road being the dividing line. The original owner was Matt Kaner III, who is the owner of the parcel in question today. So then in 2002, Mr. Kaner approached the county board asking to split his 22.43 acre tract along with 4 5-acre tracts. I'm sorry, 42.08 acre tract along with 4 5-acre tracts. Typically, we'd see that as a special use, and those are the type of cases that come before the Zoning Board of Appeals. And you'll notice that when you do vote on a recommendation at this level and on a final outcome at the county board level, that we have a restriction listed. That restriction is actually part of our ordinance, and it states that parcels created by the approval of this special use may not be divided again, even if subsequently combined with other parcels, unless the county board grants a rezoning. So that's why we're here today. This parcel previously was approved under a special use, and now they're requesting to rezone a portion of the parcel to further divide it. So after the outcome of that special use, we now have Tract 1, Tract 2, Tract 3, Tract 4, and then Mr. Kaner's Tract 5. Here's a survey that depicts the properties. It's not very clear from your angles or from your perspectives, but I do want to point out on this bottom line here, this is considered Zone A for the Poplet Hollow Creek. So the floodplain is going to be a theme here in my presentation. And then I also want to point out that Mr. Kaner's original driveway came more or less through the middle of Tract 3. He's since relocated that driveway to the northern boundary of Tract 3 and accesses his parcel through an easement. That's also going to be one of our themes. So, as I stated, Mr. Kaner's original tract was one larger piece of property. It was zoned A2. In the A2 zoning district, we have a minimum lot size of 25 acres. In order to go below the 25-acre minimum, you do have to have a special use approved by the county board. That's how we ultimately got to today's configuration. The outcome of the special use did not change the zoning. Everything remained A2 agricultural use. The subject parcel cannot be divided due to the ordinance regulation, or as we know it as the restriction, and then due to the ordinance regulations, no additional principal structure may be built at the parcel. So the ordinance says you're allowed to have one principal structure on each parcel. There's a variety of reasons for that, but ultimately that leads into a component of the petitioner's request. So in the A2 zoning district, we have that 25-acre minimum. We have that ordinance language, which again is sometimes referred to as the restriction, but really is straight out of our ordinance. And that's just listed here under the technical adequacy. So getting into the proposal itself, the petitioner is proposing to rezone a portion of the Matt Kaner tract to rural residential. And that portion is highlighted here in green. The petitioner's request would create a new buildable lot where a new principal structure could be built. What's important is that in the rural residential zoning district, we have a minimum lot size of 1 acre as opposed to 25 acres. So while the petition is proposing at this time to create one 8.8 acre parcel, they have the potential in the future to come back and divide that property again with certain conditions attached, but not having to go through the Zoning Board of Appeals. So one development scenario could look like this, where we have a cul-de-sac coming off of Voorhees Road, and then perhaps you have 3 lots. You could go larger than that and have 4, 5, 6 lots even, keeping in mind that we have a 1 acre minimum lot size. So the Unified Development Ordinance says that unless this property is rezoned, we cannot split this property further. The petitioner is proposing the rezoning for the purpose of creating a buildable lot, which is not currently allowed. The petitioner is proposing 8.839 acres, but we do have a 1 acre minimum lot size. And what we really want to point out is that access to the proposed tract may be difficult because of the Fargo Run Creek floodplain. And so we'll see on this map, from the top left of your screen to the bottom right, we have the Fargo Run Creek. And it rolls through, and the majority of the land use adjacent to that creek is going to be timber, and then we've got some agriculture. The closest house is the petitioner, Mary Molly Schuler, and her property is questionably located in a floodplain. But any further development on this parcel more than likely would be located in a floodplain. We also want to point out that Voorhees Road is within the floodplain. So this is an unstudied flood zone, and what that means is that there's no detailed analysis available for this type of flood area. We know along the Illinois River and the Kickapoo Creek that we've got roughly 100 years of flood data available, and it can reasonably predict where the floods are going to be and what type of impact and how we can safely regulate development. We don't know that in this particular area. You could tell me it floods every year, and I'd believe you. You could tell me it floods every 100 years, and I'd probably still believe you. But the purpose of our floodplain regulations is to protect new buildings from flood damage, to lessen the burden of the taxpayer for flood rescue and relief operations, to protect, conserve, and promote the orderly development of land and water resources, and to preserve the natural characteristics of stream corridors in order to moderate flood and stormwater impacts. We feel that allowing development on this parcel, which would otherwise be prohibited without the rezoning, would be contrary to the purpose of those floodplain regulations. Approximately 6.3 acres of that proposed 8.839 tract are located in the flood zone, and future construction would need to meet development regulations of the county's ordinance, and then access may be inundated during flood events. So we wanted to point out some of the transportation impacts on this parcel. Again, I apologize, you can't see it in great detail from your seats, but we've got contour lines identified on this particular map. And each contour line represents 2 feet. And we can see that the bottom portion along Voorhees Road is relatively flat. So if there were a flood event, the water would primarily pool in those areas. As you extend north and northeast, the slope gradually increases. We can see where Mr. Kaner installed his driveway, a relatively flat portion, coupled probably 30 feet higher than this bottom area. Ms. Schuler's current house is located here, but there's really not very many alternatives for a driveway should they propose to put one in outside of the floodplain. You have your steep slope coming from the east, and then you've got your steep slopes coming from the north. This map identifies soils, and the soils have an average slope. We can see again in that bottom area, it's generally flat, but as you start climbing, the area where the current petitioner's house is has a average slope of 30%. The proposed or a option for access coming from the north would be a 35% slope, and then really as you get onto the petitioner's property boundaries to the north, you're looking at about a 10% slope. So it would definitely be a challenge to access this property outside of the floodplain with the creation of a new driveway. We also wanted to point out the transportation as it exists today. This is Voorhees Road. You can notice there's a caution sign because it really bends quite a bit, and they recommend a speed of 20 miles per hour. There's also a bridge. It's 1.5 car lengths. So we really can't see the construction traffic utilizing this bridge. The road itself is crushed gravel. It's not a paved road at this location. You'll notice there's a weight limit, and I'm certainly not an engineer, but you'll notice the deteriorating condition of this bridge. And we've this is a staged photo with our 1.5 car length. This is a county SUV, and then once again the condition of the bridge, just to kind of emphasize what we're dealing with in this immediate area. This is located a couple hundred feet from the parcel. If I zoom back a few slides, the bridge is kind of right here, obviously crossing the creek, and then the access point would have to be at the southern portion of this parcel along Voorhees Road. So our land use form map identifies this area as an environmental corridor, and in the environmental corridors, those are sensitive areas primarily located in or near floodplains. Environmental corridors reflected on the future land use form map, which is out of our Peoria County Comprehensive Plan, include waterways, wetlands, and floodplain areas. Inclusion of these features is deliberate and critical in order to recognize the value these areas have in preventing and minimizing the negative aspects development can have on stormwater-related runoff problems. Principle 7 from our comprehensive plan identifies that all residents and visitors enjoy a safe community. One of the strategies to implement that principle is to encourage neighborhood design that respects safety with respect to floodplain and disaster access. So the request is inconsistent with our land use plan. Because the future land use form designates this area as environmental corridor and ag preservation. The proposed tract consists of the Fargo Run Creek, an agricultural field within the Fargo Run Creek floodplain, with timber and slopes ranging from 27% to 35%, and creating a parcel in the subject area would allow for development scenarios in a designated floodplain and environmental corridor. So some of our conclusions are in line with the findings of fact or the standards for approval that are outlined within the special use section of the Unified Development Ordinance. Consistency with the general area is the first one. We feel that land uses along the Fargo Run Creek are primarily timber with some agricultural fields. South and west of the proposed tract are sections of pasture, row crop production, timber, and the Fargo Run Creek. The request would create a parcel with the potential for subdivision development, much of which is within that floodplain area, including the proposed access. And a buildable lot that could be further subdivided is inconsistent with the current A2 zoning and the timber and floodplain of the surrounding area. Another one of those findings is the conformance of the subject property. Currently, the subject property cannot be divided. No other principal structures, including dwellings, may be built at the subject property. The request would create an 8.839 acre parcel in a timbered and agricultural area. Approximately 6.3 acres of this proposed tract including the access, are within that unstudied flood hazard area. The impact on the public. The existing transportation infrastructure may be insufficient to support further development in this area. Access from Voorhees Road may be difficult as the proposed frontage is within the Fargo Run Creek floodplain. Alternative access would be challenging due to the high slopes. And then the Radnor Township Road Commissioner and the Radnor Township Supervisor have both commented that Radnor Township is discouraging any future development in the area due to the condition of Voorhees Road, the prohibitive cost of rebuilding the road, and the location of the Fargo Run Creek floodplain. Lastly, the consistency with the adopted county plan. This area is designated as environmental corridor and ag preservation. Environmental corridors reflected on the future land use form map include floodplain areas. Inclusion of these features recognizes the value these areas have in minimizing negative aspects of development on stormwater runoff related problems and public safety. Smart growth principle number 7 encourages design that respects safety in terms of floodplain and disaster access. Therefore, the petitioner's request is inconsistent with the comprehensive land use plan, as creating a parcel in the subject area would allow for potential subdivision development in a designated floodplain and environmental corridor. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have, but we feel that this presentation summarizes the staff report that you have included within your packet.
Thank you, Andrew. Is there any questions of Andrew or Kathy? So Kathy asked, this presentation was given, and due to the nature of us not having many cases that are denied, I thought it was important that everybody, Kathy asked if she could do the presentation, and I thought it was important. I agreed that, so that way you understand what time and effort staff put into it and the ZBA to get to that decision. So, Sharon?
I'm just wondering what the rating on the bridge is. As in, is it something that we've looked to replace, or is it, I know that's...
It's a township bridge, so off the top of my head, Ms. Williams, I don't know what the rating would be. Do you guys, staff know? We can certainly get that information between now and the county board meeting for the board if you'd like.
Any other questions for Andrew? Kathy? Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate the informative. So just a reminder, the motion was made to affirm the decision of the ZBA, which was recommending denial of this case. So, Brian, did you have any questions before I call the question?
Would you just repeat that? A yes vote is to confirm the ZBA?
A yes vote is to concur with the ZBA recommending denial of the subdivision.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I got it. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's pretty complicated, that's for sure.
Any other questions? If not, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. The next is ZBA case 2021-00026, petition of Hoken Jacob Enterprises Incorporated. Is there a motion to put this on the floor? Sharon, second by Eden. Kathy? And just hold on, and then if there is any questions, the petitioner is here to answer any questions. So, Kathy?
This is a special use request to operate a tavern closer than 500 feet from a residential district. The petitioner does own and operate the Madison Park Shopping Center, and the petitioner's tenant, Gold Mine Gaming, wishes to operate a gaming cafe with a Class F wine and beer license in 2 of the units, K and L, which are on the most western portion of the shopping center. Those 2 units are approximately 30 feet from the Kickapoo Heights subdivision. That subdivision is zoned R2 medium density residential. There are 0 consents and 3 objections on file for this case. The parcel itself consists of the Madison Park Shopping Center, which is approximately 86,000 square feet. It's a commercial strip mall constructed in 1957. It is zoned C2 general commercial. The petitioner states that they would not be disruptive to neighbors any more so than current lighting hours and noise of the surrounding area. They plan on employing 5 to 8 people and have 6 gaming machines. They will have a small separate bar area. Typically, they said they seat about 1 to 4 people at their other cafes, and would be looking at something similar. The gaming cafe would occupy approximately 2,500 square feet. The surrounding area is commercial uses. It is mixed with medium-density residential neighborhoods, but this request would be consistent with the area. If this cafe were located more than 500 feet from a residential district, the special use would not be required, as it would be a permitted use in the C2 zoning district. The property is served by public water and public sewer, so the health department had no objection. Parcel has frontage along State Route 116, which is a state highway, and South Laramie Street is to the far eastern side of the property, which is the City of Peoria Road. Given the current capacity of the shopping center parking lot and the existing traffic volume along 116, the request should not have a negative impact on the local traffic patterns. There were no comments from the Illinois Department of Transportation nor the City of Peoria for the road requests. This is consistent with our land use plan form map, which designates this area as urban. It's also located within the City of Peoria's 1.5 mile jurisdiction, and it's consistent with their land use plan designation as commercial. Staff did recommend approval with the restriction that the special use shall only apply to the location on the petitioner site plan, which is identified as Exhibit A within their application, and that is identified as units K and L in the shopping center. Zoning Board recommended approval with the same restriction unanimously.
Questions or comments? Sharon?
What are the hours of operation going to be? Do we know?
Typically we go based along with the local liquor license. At our other parlors, that is generally 7 a.m. to no later than 2 a.m. And we, a lot of times, our stay over from 2 a.m., which just kind of depends on how our business pattern is. And in other municipalities, it's noon to 2 a.m. on Sunday. So it's just based on what the Peoria County liquor license allows.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. So then, as the petitioner, there's still one last step. So and that's the county board meeting, which is the second Thursday of the month. So, thank you. Next is a subdivision waiver, waiver 2021-001, petition of Don Wallace. Is there a motion to put this on the floor? Dr. Blair, second by Junior. Kathy?
Mr. Wallace is seeking a waiver from the section of our ordinance that requires a new minor subdivision to have a public water supply. This is located on Route 150, just west of Philander Chase Road. The petitioner is proposing to serve a one-lot subdivision with a private well. The existing 36.4-acre tract consists of a single-family dwelling, 2 accessory structures, timber, and an agricultural field. There is an existing well on the property, and they did submit a well report from a licensed well driller with a production rate of at least 3 gallons per minute, which exceeds our ordinance requirement of 3 gallons per minute. The petitioner is proposing to just divide 1.9-acre tract containing those structures and that well in order to sell that to a family member. Staff is recommending approval.
Any questions or comments for Kathy? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. So next is we have 2 resolutions. First resolution is a rollover appropriation for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program funding. Is there a motion to put this on the floor? Junior, second by Dr. Blair. Kathy?
We received a grant in 2015. Actually, there were 2 grants from the Illinois Emergency Management Agency Hazard Mitigation Grant Program for the acquisition and demolition of flood-impacted properties from the flooding that occurred in March of 2013. We completed those projects in 2020 and did request funding from the state for the final couple pieces there, which is a little over $20,000. We thought we would get that in the fourth quarter of last year, but we were wrong, and we've yet to receive the funds from the state of Illinois. We do expect those this year and are requesting the rollover to the 2021 budget.
Questions or comments for Kathy? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Next is appropriation for the Small Business Stabilization Grant funding. Is there a motion to put this on the floor? Mr. Watkins, Ms. Williams, Kathy?
The Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity did award the county a small business stabilization grant during the beginnings of COVID. These were emergency relief funds for small businesses impacted by COVID. 12 businesses received up to $25,000 in working capital expenses. All of those have received or will receive very soon. We've got the last batch of funding right now. Those expenses were not appropriated. It was just missed during the confusion of that time, and we're requesting that the grant program revenues and expenses be appropriated into the FY 2021 budget.
Questions or comments for Kathy? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have miscellaneous. So, curiosity, I'd asked Kathy, with everything going on in Florida, and you kept hearing about 40-year building engineering inspection reports, not knowing what Illinois or anybody else has, and there's not many buildings in rural Peoria County that would even fall under such a thing. But ask Kathy basically, what does the state of Illinois require or municipalities require around here, just so knowledge of the board would know. So Kathy and her team did some investigating and made some phone calls, and I just thought it was important if anybody would ask that you have a basic understanding of what is required around here. So with that, Kathy, thank you, and Andrew, thanks for putting all this all together so we have some basic understanding.
Sure. There really isn't, I hate to say it, but there's really not much outside of the state of Florida. That 40-year recertification is a Florida unique building code. In 1974, a building collapsed in Miami, and then in 1975, Miami-Dade County adopted their own code that required the 40-year certification. So an engineer would have to certify those commercial structures and specific residential properties that meet height requirements and square footage for both structural, well, many things, structural, electrical, roofing, windows. So they adopted that in 1975. In 2001, the state of Florida adopted it as part of the state's building code, but only specific to Miami-Dade County. Later in 2006, Broward County was added to that Florida building code to require those same certifications. That's the Fort Lauderdale area. So this is very unique to Florida. The more common approach elsewhere is to require checking the structural integrity when the building is constructed. Larger cities such as New York, Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia, San Francisco call for routine checkups only of tower exteriors, looking for things that may fall on someone below. Even there, their definitions of high rises vary, as well as how often those re-inspections occur. Most communities in the United States follow the international codes, as we do here in Peoria County. ICC does not address these re-inspections at all. However, the ICC Council is meeting in August to discuss the Surfside tragedy and take another look at those codes. It may very well be possible that there's future changes to the codes which would address at least re-inspections of high rises and in those areas of sea level rises or high wind events. Here, as in the city of Peoria and most of the communities we know of outside of Florida, and again, we checked even with ICC that this is very unique to Florida.
Thanks, Kathy. I just thought it was important that we have, with how much it was in the news, some sort of basic understanding. So I do appreciate sure that wasn't the easiest task to try to figure out. So I do appreciate it. Anything else under miscellaneous?
Mr. Chairman, I've got the answer to Ms. Williams' question about the structural sufficiency rating for the township bridge. It is 42.6 out of 100. For context, on a county bridge, we typically start to look at scheduling and designing a replacement when it drops below 50.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions, comments under miscellaneous? If not, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.